A stray dog drops a tiny red shoe at Delta Force veteran Marcus Kane's feet and refuses to leave. When he follows it into the frozen Montana wilderness,
Come on, we have
he
to hurry.
finds a small barefoot girl collapsed in the snow,
Are you all right?
hypothermic, barely breathing. The
Can you
dog
hear
had
me?
been making trips for hours trying to get help.
Stay with me.
That red shoe was a message from a child who knew no one was coming. Before we begin, tell us where you're watching from. And if this story touches your heart, please subscribe for more. The cabin sat 12 miles outside the town of Whitefish, Montana, accessible only by a single dirt road that disappeared under snow for 5 months of the year. Marcus Kane had chosen this place for exactly that reason. Isolation. Silence. The kind of distance that let a man finally stop looking over his shoulder. He was 47 years old. 23 years in Delta Force. 4 tours in Afghanistan. 3 in Iraq. More missions in more countries than he was allowed to talk about. He'd walked away 2 years ago with a chest full of medals he kept in a box under his bed and a mind full of memories he couldn't file away as neatly. The cabin was his sanctuary. Hand-hewn logs. A stone fireplace. 2 rooms and a porch that looked out over a valley so beautiful it almost hurt. He spent his days chopping wood, carving furniture, and learning how to sleep through the night without jerking awake at every sound. It was early February. The kind of cold that turned your breath to ice crystals and made the snow squeak under your boots. Marcus had just come back from checking his woodshed when he saw it. A dog. Sitting on his porch steps. Staring at him with eyes that seemed far too intelligent for a stray. The dog was a German Shepherd mix, maybe 60 pounds, with a coat the color of winter wheat streaked with charcoal. But it was the eyes that stopped Marcus cold. Amber. Focused with an intensity that reminded him of operators he'd worked with, men who could communicate entire mission briefs with a glance. This wasn't a lost pet wandering aimlessly through the Montana wilderness. This was an animal on a mission. Marcus set down his armload of firewood slowly, deliberately, the way you move when you don't want to spook something wild. But the dog didn't spook. It sat perfectly still on the bottom porch step, chest heaving, breath coming in rapid clouds that hung in the 17-degree air. Now that Marcus was closer, he could see the condition the animal was in. Ribs showing through that wheat-colored coat. Paws cracked and bleeding, leaving small red prints in the snow. Its right ear was torn, an old wound that had healed badly, leaving a notch that gave it a battle-worn look. No collar. No tags. Burrs and pine needles tangled in its fur. But what really caught Marcus's attention was what the dog carried in its mouth. A shoe. A child's shoe. Bright red. Patent leather that caught the weak February sunlight. Size maybe 11 or 12, small enough for a 5 or 6-year-old. One of those dress shoes little girls wear to church or special occasions, with a small strap across the top and a buckle shaped like a flower. The dog leaned forward and dropped the shoe at Marcus's feet. Then it did something that sent ice water through his veins. It barked. Deliberate. Then it turned its head toward the tree line to the north and stared. Marcus had spent 23 years reading body language in combat zones. Interpreting signals. Understanding what people, and sometimes animals, were trying to communicate when words weren't enough. And every instinct honed through 2 decades of special operations was screaming at him now. This dog was trying to tell him something. "Where'd you get that, boy?" Marcus said quietly, crouching down to the dog's level. The animal's eyes snapped back to him. It whined. A high, urgent sound that didn't match its size. Then it nosed the shoe toward Marcus, looked back at the forest, and whined again. Marcus picked up the shoe. It was cold, wet, covered in a thin layer of snow and pine needles. But what made his jaw clench was the condition. The leather was scuffed badly on one side, as if it had been dragged through underbrush. And there, on the white rubber sole, was something that made Marcus's pulse kick up. Blood. Not much. Just a small smear near the heel. But enough. Jesus, Marcus whispered. He looked at the dog. Really looked. Those bleeding paws. The heaving chest. The way the animal trembled, not from fear, but from exhaustion. This dog had run a long way. And it wasn't done running. Marcus stood up, his mind already moving through possibilities. A lost hiker? A family broken down on one of the Forest Service roads? But it was February. The tourist season was months away. The only people crazy enough to be out in this weather were locals who knew better than to bring a small child into wilderness that could kill you in an hour if you weren't prepared. The dog barked again. Louder this time. More insistent. Then it did something that sealed Marcus's decision. It picked up the shoe, walked 3 steps toward the tree line, set the shoe down, and looked back at Marcus. Waiting. You want me to follow you, Marcus said. It wasn't a question. The dog's tail moved. Not a wag exactly. More like a signal flag. Follow. Marcus had walked away from war 2 years ago, determined to leave behind the life of split-second decisions and life-or-death stakes. He'd come to this cabin to escape exactly this kind of situation, the kind where someone needed help and he was the only one who could provide it. But some things you don't walk away from. Some battles find you no matter how far you run. All right, Marcus said. Show me. He moved fast. Back into the cabin. Grabbed his trauma kit. Old habits died hard, and he'd kept his field medical supplies well stocked. Threw on his heavy coat, gloves, winter boots. Checked his satellite phone. Signal was good. He clipped it to his belt along with a fixed-blade knife, a flashlight, and an emergency space blanket. When he came back out, the dog was standing now, rigid with anticipation, the red shoe back in its mouth. Lead the way, Marcus said. The dog took off like it had been shot from a cannon. Marcus had to jog to keep up, his boots crunching through 8 inches of snow. The dog moved with purpose, not following any trail Marcus could see, but navigating the terrain with absolute certainty. North through the tree line. Down a shallow ravine. Up the other side where the pine trees grew so thick the snow was thinner, trapped in the branches above. 10 minutes in, Marcus knew they were heading away from any roads or trails. 15 minutes in, they were in old-growth forest where the trees were thick as telephone poles and the silence was absolute except for their breathing and the crunch of snow. The dog never slowed. Never hesitated. Even with those bleeding paws leaving a trail behind them, the animal pushed forward with a determination that bordered on supernatural. 20 minutes. 25. Marcus's legs were burning. His breath coming harder in the thin, cold air. The dog was a golden blur ahead of him, moving through the trees like it could see a path invisible to human eyes. Then, at 32 minutes by Marcus's count, the dog stopped. They were in a small clearing, surrounded by massive Douglas firs. A frozen creek cut through the eastern edge, just a ribbon of ice and snow now. And there, at the base of the largest tree, was a sight that punched the air from Marcus's lungs. A child. A little girl. Curled on her side in the snow. Barely visible except for the bright pink of her jacket. Marcus was moving before conscious thought caught up. He covered the 20 yards in seconds, dropped to his knees beside her, his hands already reaching for her neck to check for a pulse. She was tiny. Maybe 5 years old. Blonde hair in 2 braids that had mostly come undone. Her face was pale, lips blue, eyes closed. She wore that pink puffy jacket, too thin for this weather. Leggings. 1 red shoe on her left foot. The right foot was bare, white with cold, the toes an alarming shade of purple. Marcus pressed 2 fingers to her neck. Faint. Too faint. But they're... I've got you, sweetheart, he said, his voice steady even though his heart was hammering. I've got you. He ran his hands over her quickly, checking for injuries. No obvious broken bones. No blood except for some scratches on her face and hands. But her skin was ice cold. Her breathing was shallow, maybe 4 breaths a minute when it should be 20. Classic severe hypothermia. She was maybe 30 minutes from death. Maybe less. The dog was beside him now, the red shoe dropped in the snow, whining and nudging the little girl's shoulder with its nose. "Good dog," Marcus said, already shrugging out of his coat. "You did good. She's alive because of you." He worked with the efficiency of someone who'd done field medicine in far worse conditions. Wrapped the girl in his coat first, then the space blanket from his trauma kit. Checked her pupils, sluggish but reactive. Felt her abdomen, soft, not rigid. Her breathing was the main concern. She was maybe 1 step away from her core temperature dropping so low her heart would simply stop. He needed to get her warm. But moving someone with severe hypothermia was dangerous. If you warmed them too quickly, or if you jostled them too much, you could send them into cardiac arrest. Marcus made a decision. He pulled off his gloves, tucked them into his belt, and lifted the little girl as gently as he'd ever moved anything in his life. She weighed maybe 40 pounds. Felt like nothing. He cradled her against his chest, her head against his shoulder, and started back the way they'd come. The dog led again, but slower this time, as if it understood the need for care. As Marcus walked, his mind was racing. This wasn't an accident. Kids don't end up 3 miles into wilderness alone in February by accident. Someone had brought her out here. Or she'd run from something so terrible that freezing to death seemed like a better option. He looked down at her face, peaceful in unconsciousness, and felt something he hadn't felt in 2 years. Rage. The cold, focused kind that made him dangerous. Whoever did this to her was going to answer for it. The hike back took 40 minutes because Marcus couldn't move at full speed. Every step was measured. Every shift in weight calculated to keep the girl as still as possible. The dog stayed close, occasionally looking back to check on them, its tail low, ears forward. When the cabin finally came into view, Marcus allowed himself 1 moment of relief. Then he was back in operator mode. Inside. Door kicked shut behind him. Girl laid carefully on the couch closest to the fireplace that was still burning. He added more wood, got the flames high. Then he was peeling away the wet clothes carefully, replacing them with his own dry thermal shirt and wool socks. More blankets. Not too many, you had to rewarm gradually. He checked her pulse again. Still there. Still faint. Her breathing had picked up slightly. Maybe 6 breaths a minute now. Her skin was still deathly cold, but the blueness of her lips was fading to purple. Progress. The dog had come inside and was lying on the floor next to the couch, its muzzle resting on its paws, eyes locked on the little girl. Marcus grabbed his satellite phone. His finger hovered over the emergency contact. 911 would connect him to county dispatch. They'd send an ambulance, maybe a helicopter if the weather cooperated. Medical professionals who could handle this better than he could. But something stopped him. That red shoe. The condition of this child. The fact that she was 3 miles into wilderness in February with inadequate clothing. If he called 911, there would be police. Questions. And this girl would go back into the system. Back to whoever was supposed to be caring for her. Back to whoever had failed her so completely that she'd ended up dying in the snow. Marcus had seen what happened when you put your faith in systems. In chains of command. In trusting that the people in charge actually gave a damn. He'd seen it overseas in villages where the local government was supposed to protect people and instead sold them out. He'd seen it stateside when veterans he knew got chewed up by bureaucracy and spit out with nothing. He wasn't about to hand this little girl back to people who'd already proven they couldn't keep her safe. Not yet. Not until he knew what he was dealing with. Marcus pocketed the phone. He'd make a call. But not to 911. Not yet. First, he needed this girl to wake up. He needed her to tell him what happened. Then he'd decide who to trust. He sat down on the floor next to the couch and checked her pulse again. Stronger now. Her breathing was up to maybe 8 breaths a minute. Her skin was starting to pink up in places. She was coming back. "Come on, sweetheart," Marcus said softly. "Stay with me. You're safe now. I promise you're safe." The dog made a small sound, something between a whine and a sigh. Marcus reached out and put his hand on the animal's head. The dog leaned into the touch, eyes never leaving the little girl. "You saved her life, you know that?" Marcus said. "How long were you running back and forth? How many times did you try to get help before you found me?" The dog's tail thumped once against the floor. Marcus looked at those bleeding paws and felt his throat tighten. This animal had run itself nearly to death trying to save a child. Had probably been making trips back and forth for hours, trying to find someone, anyone, who would listen. "I'm listening now," Marcus said. "And I'm not letting her go back to whatever hell she came from. You have my word." It was another hour before the little girl's eyes fluttered open. Marcus was checking her pulse for probably the 100th time when he felt her stir. Her eyelids moved. Her breathing changed. Then those eyes opened, brown, confused, full of fear. "Hey," Marcus said gently, staying very still so he wouldn't scare her. "Hey, it's okay. You're safe. My name is Marcus. You're in my cabin. You were very cold, but you're warming up now." The little girl's eyes darted around the room, taking in the log walls, the fire, the dog lying beside the couch. When she saw the dog, something in her face changed. The fear didn't leave, but it was joined by something else. Relief. "Duke," she whispered, her voice barely audible. The dog's ears perked up. Its tail began to wag, slow and careful. "That his name?" Marcus asked. "Duke." The little girl nodded. A tear rolled down her cheek. "Duke saved you," Marcus said. "He found me. Brought me to you. You've got a very good friend there." More tears now. The little girl's face crumpled, and she started to cry. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just quiet, exhausted sobs that shook her small frame. Marcus let her cry. Sometimes that was all you could do. Sometimes people needed to let it out before they could let anything else in. After a few minutes, the crying subsided. The little girl wiped her face with the oversized thermal shirt Marcus had put on her. "What's your name, sweetheart?" Marcus asked gently. The little girl looked at him for a long moment, as if deciding whether to trust him. Then, in a voice so quiet Marcus had to lean in to hear it, she said, "Emma. My name is Emma. Emma Rose Parker." "Okay, Emma Rose Parker," Marcus said. "Can you tell me how old you are?" "6, Emma whispered. "I'm 6 years old." 6. Jesus. 6 years old, and someone had left her to die in the wilderness. "Emma," Marcus said carefully, "can you tell me how you ended up in the forest? Do you remember?" Emma's face went blank. That 1,000-yard stare Marcus had seen on soldiers who'd been through things they couldn't process yet. Then, slowly she nodded. "I ran away," she whispered. "From the bad house." "The bad house," Marcus repeated. "Can you tell me about the bad house?" Emma's hands clenched in the blanket. Duke whined and moved closer, resting his chin on the edge of the couch. Emma reached out and put her small hand on the dog's head. "The house with Mr. and Mrs. Carson," Emma said. "They're supposed to be my foster parents. But they're bad. They're really bad." Foster parents. That answered one question and raised about 100 more. What did Mr. and Mrs. Carson do that was bad? Marcus asked, keeping his voice level even though he could feel that cold rage building again. Emma's bottom lip trembled. "They locked me in the basement. When I was bad. When I didn't clean right or when I cried. And Mrs. Carson said, she said I was a burden. That nobody wanted me. That's why my real parents gave me away. Marcus's jaw clenched so hard he thought his teeth might crack. Emma, he said gently, your real parents didn't give you away. Do you know what happened to your real parents? Emma nodded. They died. In a car accident. When I was 4. I remember them a little bit. My mom smelled like flowers. My dad called me his little firefly because I was always running around. I'm so sorry, Emma, Marcus said and meant it. Emma looked at him with those solemn brown eyes. Are you going to send me back to the Carsons? No, Marcus said immediately. Absolutely not. Promise. I promise. Emma studied his face, then nodded, accepting his word. That trust, freely given by a child who had every reason not to trust any adult, hit Marcus harder than he expected. Emma, Marcus said, how long were you in the forest? I don't know, Emma said. It was dark when I ran away. Last night. Mrs. Carson said she was going to teach me a lesson. She said I was going to sleep in the basement with no dinner. But there are spiders in the basement. And rats. And it's so dark. Her voice was rising, panic creeping in. Duke whined and licked her hand. So I ran, Emma continued. I waited until they were asleep and I ran out the back door. I just kept running. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't stay there anymore. You did the right thing, Marcus said firmly. Running was brave. But then I got lost, Emma whispered. It was so dark and so cold. I walked and walked but I couldn't find any houses. And then I fell down. And I tried to get up but I was so tired. And my foot hurt because I lost my shoe. And then Duke found me. She looked at the dog, her eyes shining with tears. He came out of nowhere, Emma said. In the dark. I thought maybe he was a wolf and I was scared. But he licked my face. And he laid down next to me to keep me warm. And when the sun came up, he took my shoe and he left. And I thought he was leaving me alone. But he came back. And he took my shoe again. And then he came back again. He kept leaving and coming back. I think he was trying to get help. He was, Marcus said. He brought your shoe to me. He led me right to you. Emma looked at Duke like he'd hung the moon. He's the best dog in the whole world. He is, Marcus agreed. But Emma, I need to know more about the Carsons. Where is their house? Emma's face clouded. I don't know. Somewhere past the town. Past the gas station. There's a blue mailbox at the end of the driveway. How long were you living with the Carsons? 3 months, Emma said. Since November. My caseworker, Mrs. Peterson, she said the Carsons were nice people. She said they had lots of experience with foster kids. She said I should be grateful. The bitterness in that last word, coming from a 6-year-old, was like a knife to the chest. Were there other kids at the Carson house? Marcus asked. Emma nodded. 2 boys. Michael and Tyler. They're older. Maybe 9 and 10. But they ran away a month ago. Mrs. Carson said they were ungrateful and troublemakers. But I think they were smart. They got out. Marcus's mind was racing now. 2 other kids who'd run away. A foster home where children were locked in basements and told they were worthless. A caseworker who'd placed Emma there despite what sounded like obvious warning signs. This wasn't just one bad foster home. This was systemic failure. Emma, Marcus said carefully, besides Mrs. Peterson, who else knew you were living with the Carsons? Emma shrugged. I don't know. Mrs. Peterson came to visit sometimes. Once a month maybe. But Mrs. Carson always made everything look nice when she came. And she told me if I said anything bad, I'd be sent somewhere worse. Of course she did. Marcus looked at this tiny 6-year-old girl, wrapped in blankets too big for her, with a dog who'd run himself bloody trying to save her, and he made a decision. He'd made a promise. He'd told Emma he wouldn't send her back. And Marcus Kane didn't break promises. But he also wasn't going to let whoever was responsible for this get away with it. Someone had put Emma Rose Parker in that house. Someone had ignored the warning signs when 2 other kids ran away. Someone had failed their duties so completely that a 6-year-old had nearly frozen to death in the Montana wilderness. And Marcus was going to make sure every single one of them answered for it. But first, Emma needed rest, food, safety, and that dog needed medical attention for those paws. "Okay, Emma," Marcus said, "here's what's going to happen. You're going to rest here for a while. You're going to eat something warm. And you and Duke are both going to be safe. Then, when you're feeling better, we're going to figure out how to make sure you never have to go back to a bad house again. Deal?" Emma looked at him with those old, sad eyes that no 6-year-old should have. Then she nodded. "Deal," she whispered. "Good," Marcus said. "Now, do you like hot chocolate?" For the first time since waking up, Emma smiled. It was small, tentative, but it was there. "Yes," she said. "I like hot chocolate." "Then hot chocolate it is," Marcus said, standing up. "And Duke here gets some chicken and water. And maybe I can do something about those paws." As Marcus moved to the kitchen, he looked back at the little girl and the dog curled up together by the fire. Emma had her hand buried in Duke's fur. The dog had his eyes closed but his ears still up, still alert, still protecting. 2 survivors who'd found each other in the dark. Marcus didn't believe in fate. Didn't believe in divine intervention or things happening for a reason. But he believed in this. When someone needed help and you had the skills to help them, you had a duty to act. He'd walked away from war. But war, it seemed, wasn't done with him. This time, though, he wasn't fighting for politicians or policy or abstract concepts like freedom and democracy. This time, he was fighting for Emma Rose Parker. And he was going to win. The Carson house was dark when Marcus arrived at 3 a.m. He'd parked the truck a half-mile away and approached on foot, moving through the tree line with the practiced silence of someone who'd infiltrated far more dangerous places than a Montana suburb. The night vision goggles turned the world green and grainy. He could see the house clearly now. No movement inside. No dogs. The backyard gate was still unlocked from his earlier visit. Marcus wasn't here to confront anyone. Not yet. He was here for reconnaissance. To find what the Carsons were hiding. Because people who locked children in root cellars, people who made kids disappear without consequence, they always had secrets. And secrets left traces. He moved to the cellar first. Opened it again. This time, he climbed down inside. The smell was worse enclosed. He breathed through his mouth and swept his light across every surface. The scratches on the wall weren't random. When he looked closer, he could see they formed letters. Words. Carved painstakingly into the stone with something sharp. Please. Different handwriting. Different depths. Multiple children had been down here. Multiple children had carved their desperate pleas into walls that no one would see. Marcus photographed everything. Then he noticed something. In the far corner, where the dirt floor met the stone wall, the earth looked disturbed. Recently, within the last few months, judging by how the soil hadn't fully settled. His blood went cold. He pulled out his knife and began to dig carefully. 6 inches down, his blade hit something solid. Not rock. Something that gave slightly under pressure. Plastic. Marcus cleared more dirt away until he could see it clearly. A tarp. Wrapped around something. Buried shallow in the corner of a cellar where children had been tortured. His hands were steady as he pulled it free. 23 years of training kept him calm even as his mind was screaming. He unwrapped the tarp carefully. And found a box. A plastic storage container, the kind you'd buy at any hardware store. Inside were belongings. A child's backpack. A stuffed bear. A pair of sneakers, size Youth 4. A jacket with a name written on the tag in permanent marker, Tyler Morrison. But no Tyler. Marcus kept digging. The dirt in that corner went down about 3 feet. At the bottom, he found more plastic. More tarps. But these weren't empty. These had bones. Small bones. Marcus sat back on his heels, his breath coming faster now. He'd seen death before. Had dealt death before. But this was different. This was children. This was evil in its purest form. He climbed out of the cellar and called Tom Whitmore. The sheriff answered on the first ring. "This better be an emergency, Marcus." "It is. I'm at the Carson house. You need to get here now. And bring forensics. And the state police. And anyone else you can think of." "What did you find?" Marcus looked back at the cellar, his jaw tight. "Bodies, Tom. I found bodies." By sunrise, the Carson house was swarming with law enforcement. State police, FBI, forensic teams. Sheriff Whitmore had come through with everyone Marcus had asked for and then some. Marcus sat in Tom's truck, giving his statement for the 3rd time. The FBI agent, a woman named Patterson, late 30s, sharp eyes, listened without interrupting. "So let me get this straight," she said when he finished. "You illegally entered the Carson property, conducted an unauthorized search, and discovered evidence of multiple homicides." "Yes, ma'am." "You understand that everything you found might be inadmissible in court because of how it was obtained? I understand that 2 boys are dead and more might be if we don't act fast. And I understand that sometimes following every rule to the letter means bad people get away with evil things. So yes, I broke some laws." "Arrest me if you want. But first, find those kids." Patterson studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded. "We're going to need you to stay available for further questioning. Don't leave the state." "I'm not going anywhere." She left. Tom climbed into the truck a few minutes later, his face gray with exhaustion. "They found 3 sets of remains," he said quietly. "Preliminary assessment says they're children. Ages ranging from maybe 6 to 12. Been buried for different lengths of time. Oldest one might be 3 years old. Most recent is probably 2 to 3 months. 2 to 3 months. That would match when Michael and Tyler disappeared." "Jesus," Marcus whispered. "They're excavating the whole yard now. They think there might be more." Tom rubbed his face. "The Carsons lawyered up immediately. But their lawyer's already trying to make a deal. Mrs. Carson is claiming her husband did it. Mr. Carson is claiming he was following orders from someone higher up." "Orders from who?" "He won't say. Not yet. But Marcus, this goes deeper than we thought. The FBI's looking into Linda Peterson now. And her supervisor, Greg Hammond. And about a dozen other people in the state foster care system. This isn't just one bad foster home. This is trafficking. This is organized child abuse on a massive scale." Marcus felt sick. "How many kids?" "We don't know yet. But if Michael and Tyler are in that yard, and if there are 3 other sets of remains, that's 5 children who went into that house and never came out. And Emma." Tom's voice cracked. "Emma would have been number 6 if that dog hadn't found you." They sat in silence for a moment. Through the windshield, Marcus could see forensic teams working methodically through the Carson yard, flags marking locations, cameras documenting everything. "What happens now?" Marcus asked. Now we build a case. We find everyone involved. We get justice for those kids." Tom looked at Marcus. "And we make sure Emma has a real chance at a real life." The investigation moved fast once it started. Within 48 hours, Linda Peterson was arrested. Within 72 hours, her supervisor Greg Hammond was arrested. By the end of the week, 8 people connected to Montana's foster care system were in custody, charged with everything from child endangerment to conspiracy to commit murder. The remains found in the Carson yard were identified: Tyler Morrison, Michael Chin, and 3 other children who'd been in the foster system and had been listed as runaways years ago: Anna Rodriguez, age 7, James Wilson, age 9, Sophie Kim, age 6. 5 children. 5 lives stolen. 5 families who'd been told their kids had run away, who'd spent years wondering and hoping and grieving. The Carsons broke within days. Mrs. Carson admitted to decades of abuse. Mr. Carson admitted to the murders. But they both insisted they were part of something bigger: a network of foster homes across 3 states that operated more like a trafficking ring than a child welfare system. They provided children to people who paid well for access to vulnerable kids. And when children became problematic, when they threatened to tell, or tried to run away, or fought back, they were eliminated. The FBI's investigation expanded. More arrests followed. More horrible truths came to light. But through it all, Marcus stayed focused on one thing: Emma. Sarah Reese worked miracles. Within a week, she'd filed emergency custody papers. Within 2 weeks, she'd gotten Emma removed from the foster system entirely and placed in Marcus's temporary care while a more permanent solution was worked out. Emma stayed at the cabin. She had her own room now. Marcus had moved out of his bedroom and into the smaller one, giving her the space with the big window that looked out over the valley. She had new clothes, new shoes, a new red winter coat that she'd picked out herself, though she made sure it came with pockets big enough for Duke's treats. Duke, it turned out, had been a family dog once. His tags had eventually been traced to a family in Whitefish who'd lost him 6 months ago when he'd escaped their yard during a thunderstorm. They'd searched for weeks, posted flyers, checked shelters. They'd mourned him. When Sarah tracked them down and explained what Duke had done, how he'd saved Emma's life, how he'd run himself bloody trying to get help, they made a decision that Marcus would never forget. They signed over ownership. To Emma. He found his person, the dad had said, wiping tears from his eyes. Some dogs do that. They find the person they're meant to protect. Duke found Emma. He should stay with her. So Duke stayed. And Emma started to heal. It wasn't fast. Healing never is. She had nightmares. She woke up crying some nights, disoriented and scared. She flinched at loud noises. She hoarded food in her room, afraid it would be taken away. But slowly, day by day, she got better. She smiled more, laughed sometimes, started to believe that she was safe. Marcus learned how to braid hair, learned what 6-year-old girls liked for breakfast, learned how to answer impossible questions like, why did the Carsons hurt kids? With honesty that didn't traumatize and hope that didn't feel like lies. And he learned something about himself, that walking away from war didn't mean you stopped being a warrior. It just meant you chose different battles. And this battle, helping one small girl believe in safety again, was the most important one he'd ever fought. 3 months after Emma had nearly died in the snow, Sarah called Marcus with news. "The court approved your petition," she said. "You're officially Emma's foster parent. And if Emma wants, you can start the process to adopt her." Marcus had been sitting on the porch, watching Emma and Duke play in the spring grass. She was laughing, really laughing, chasing the dog around the yard. Her blonde hair was loose around her shoulders. Her cheeks were pink with exertion and joy. "What does that involve?" Marcus asked. "Home study. Background checks. Though given your military record, that'll be a formality. Character references. A few meetings with a family court judge. It takes about 6 months usually. But Marcus, I have to ask. Are you sure? Raising a child is different than taking care of her temporarily. It's 18 years. It's school and doctors and teenage rebellion and college funds. It's everything." Marcus watched Emma pick a dandelion and blow the seeds into the wind, laughing as Duke tried to catch them. He thought about the life he'd planned. the solitude, the peace, the distance from responsibility and complications. Then he thought about Emma curled up on his couch that first night, nearly dead from cold and cruelty. He thought about her asking him to promise not to send her back. He thought about the way she called him Marcus, now, not Dad, not yet, maybe never, but with a trust and affection that meant more than any title. "I'm sure," he said. "If she wants me, I'm sure. Then you should ask her." So he did. That night, after dinner, with Duke lying between them by the fireplace. "Emma," Marcus said carefully, "you know how you've been living here with me for a while now?" Emma nodded, her fingers twisting in Duke's fur. "And you know how Sarah has been helping make sure you're safe and taken care of?" Another nod. "Well, Sarah called today. And she said that if you want, you could stay here. Not just for now. For always. Forever. You'd be my daughter. Legally. Officially. This would be your home. I'd be your dad, I guess. If you wanted." Emma was quiet for a long time. So long that Marcus started to worry he'd said the wrong thing, pushed too fast, scared her. Then she looked up at him with those solemn brown eyes and asked, "Would Duke stay too?" Marcus felt his throat tighten. "Yes. Duke stays too. Always. And I wouldn't have to go to any more foster homes? Never. I promise. And nobody would lock me in the basement?" "Emma, there's no basement. And even if there was, nobody would ever lock you anywhere. You're safe here. You'll always be safe here." Emma thought about this. Then she said in a very small voice, "Do you want me to stay?" And that was when Marcus understood. She wasn't afraid he'd send her away. She was afraid she wasn't wanted. That she was, as Mrs. Carson had told her, a burden. Marcus got down on the floor so he was at her level. He looked her straight in the eyes. "Emma Rose Parker," he said, "the day Duke brought me to you was the day my life started making sense again. I was living out here alone, hiding from the world, trying to forget things I'd seen and done. I thought I was done. Thought the best parts of my life were behind me. But then I found you. And everything changed. You are not a burden. You are not a problem. You are brave and strong and kind, and I would be honored, if you'd let me be your dad." Emma's eyes filled with tears. "Really? Really?" She launched herself at him, wrapping her small arms around his neck and holding on like she'd never let go. Marcus held her back, this tiny fierce survivor who'd walked through hell and come out the other side, and felt something in his chest crack wide open. "I want to stay," Emma whispered against his shoulder. "I want to stay forever." "Then you will," Marcus said. "Forever." Duke, sensing the importance of the moment, wedged himself between them and licked both their faces until they were laughing through their tears. 6 months later, the adoption was finalized on a crisp October morning in Flathead County Court. Judge Morrison, no relation to Tyler, but she'd known about the case and had specifically asked to oversee the adoption, made it official with a smile and a declaration that Emma Rose Parker was now Emma Rose Kane. Sarah was there, beaming. Sheriff Tom Whitmore came in uniform, standing at the back of the courtroom like a proud grandfather. Even Duke was there, wearing a bow tie that Emma had picked out, sitting perfectly still in the front row like he understood the solemnity of the occasion. Afterwards, they had a party at the cabin. Nothing fancy. Just cake and ice cream and the people who mattered. Sarah brought her partner. Tom brought his wife. A few of Marcus's old military buddies showed up, men who'd flown in from across the country because Marcus Kane had invited them, and that meant something. Emma wore a new dress, red, her favorite color now, reclaimed from trauma and turned into something joyful. She ran around the yard with Duke, showing everyone the tree fort Marcus had built, the garden where they grew vegetables, the swing he'd hung from the big oak tree. As the sun set and people started to leave, Tom pulled Marcus aside. "You hear about the trial?" Tom asked. Which one? There've been about 20. The Carsons. They're going away for life. Multiple consecutive sentences. They'll die in prison. Marcus nodded. It was what he'd expected. What they deserved. And the others? He asked. Linda Peterson got 15 years. Greg Hammond got 20. The trafficking ring is dismantled. The FBI estimates they saved about 40 children who were in the pipeline. 40 kids who won't end up like Tyler and Michael and the others. That's something. It's more than something. It's everything. And Marcus, it happened because you didn't walk away. Because you followed that dog into the woods. Because you gave a damn. Marcus looked over at Emma, who was sitting on the porch steps with Duke, eating cake and laughing at something Sarah had said. Her blonde hair caught the last light of the sun. Her smile was real and unguarded. I didn't save her, Marcus said quietly. Duke did. I just gave her a place to land. No, Tom said firmly. You gave her a home. You gave her a future. You gave her proof that not all adults are monsters. That's not nothing, Marcus. That's everything. That night, after everyone had gone and Emma was in bed, Marcus sat on the porch with Duke at his feet. The dog's paws had healed completely, leaving only faint scars. Battle scars, Marcus thought. Marks of honor. Emma appeared in the doorway, rubbing her eyes, her hair messy from sleep. Can't sleep? Marcus asked. Had a dream, Emma said. Not a nightmare, she'd learned to tell him the difference. Just a dream. Want to talk about it? Emma came out and climbed into his lap. She was getting bigger. Growing fast. Soon she'd be too big for this. But not yet. I dreamed about my real mom and dad, Emma said. The ones who died. That must have been hard. No. It was good. They were smiling. And they told me they were glad I was safe. They said. She paused, then continued in a rush. They said they were glad I found you. That I found a new dad who would take care of me. Marcus felt his eyes sting. You think they'd approve? Emma looked up at him with absolute certainty. I know they would. Because you're the best dad ever. I don't know about that. I'm still learning. That's okay. I'm still learning how to be a daughter. We can learn together. And that, Marcus thought, was perhaps the wisest thing anyone had ever said to him. They sat together for a while, watching the stars come out over the Montana mountains. Duke sighed contentedly at their feet. Somewhere in the forest, an owl called. The world was vast and dark and full of dangers. But here, on this porch, in this moment, there was only safety. Only love. Only a man, a girl, and a dog who'd all found each other when they needed it most. Dad, Emma said sleepily. It was the first time she'd called him that. Marcus had to swallow hard before he could answer. Yeah, Firefly? Emma smiled at the nickname, her father's nickname, reclaimed and repurposed. Thank you. For keeping your promise. For not sending me back. I'll always keep my promises to you, Emma. Always. I know, she said. And then, so quietly he almost didn't hear it, I love you. Marcus held her closer, this brave, broken, healing little girl who'd survived impossible odds and still believed in goodness. I love you too, he said. More than you'll ever know. Duke raised his head and looked at them both with those intelligent amber eyes. His tail thumped against the porch. Message received. Message understood. They were a family. Not the one any of them had expected. Not the one any of them had planned. But a family nonetheless. Built from trauma and survival and a dog's determination to save a life. Built from second chances and found connections and the stubborn belief that broken things could be made whole. Built from love. And it was enough. More than enough. It was everything. 2 years later, Emma Rose Kane, age 8 now, stood on the stage of Whitefish Elementary School and accepted her award for Best Essay in the 2nd grade. The essay was titled, My Hero, and it was about a German shepherd named Duke who'd saved her life. Marcus sat in the audience, clapping until his hands hurt. Duke sat next to him. The school had made a special exception to allow the dog inside for this, wearing his service dog vest that Marcus had gotten him certified for. Emma had anxiety sometimes. PTSD from her early childhood. Duke had been trained to help her through it. After the ceremony, Emma ran to Marcus and showed him her certificate. "I won, Dad. Did you see? I won. I saw. I'm so proud of you, Firefly." Emma beamed. Then she knelt down and hugged Duke. We won together." The dog's tail wagged like it always did when Emma was happy. As they walked to the truck, Emma chattering about her friends and her teacher and the pizza party they were going to have tomorrow, Marcus thought about the path that had led them here. The pain, the trauma, the near-death experience that had changed all their lives. And he thought about Sheriff Tom Whitmore's words from 2 years ago, "You gave her a future." But the truth was more complicated, more beautiful. They'd given each other a future. Emma had given Marcus a reason to live again. A purpose beyond survival. A reminder that the world wasn't just violence and ugliness, that there was still innocence worth protecting and hope worth fighting for. And Duke, loyal, brave, determined Duke, had given them both the chance to find each other. 3 broken pieces that had found each other in the snow and made something whole. Emma grabbed Marcus's hand as they walked. Duke trotted beside them, alert and protective as always. "Dad," Emma said. "Yeah. Can we get ice cream? To celebrate?" Marcus looked down at her upturned face, at those brown eyes that still held shadows but also held light, at the smile that came easier every day. "Ice cream it is," he said. "And Duke gets a burger." Emma laughed and ran ahead to the truck, Duke bounding after her, the two of them inseparable as always. Marcus followed, his heart full in a way it hadn't been in years. Maybe ever. He'd thought he'd left war behind when he came to Montana. But he'd been wrong. The war had found him. Only this time, he'd won. Not with weapons or tactics or violence. He'd won with love. With commitment. With showing up every day for a little girl who needed someone to believe in her. And in the process, he'd saved himself. Behind them, the Montana mountains rose against a blue sky. The air was clean and cold. The world was beautiful and terrible and full of both monsters and heroes. But here, in this moment, in this truck heading for ice cream, there were only the 3 of them. A family forged in fire and snow. A family built on the kind of love that doesn't give up. That doesn't walk away. That runs through the darkness with a red shoe in its mouth until it finds help. That kind of love changes everything. That kind of love saves lives. That kind of love is forever. If this story touched your heart, remember, there are real children in foster care right now who need advocates, safe homes, and second chances. Consider supporting your local foster care organizations, becoming a foster parent, or advocating for foster care reform in your community. Every child deserves what Emma found: safety, love, and a place to call home.